They haven't let the guests in yet. The power of the click. When I do let all the, I set up this meeting differently than I had in the past. So all the participants are going to be coming in. I'm going to mute them, which may mute you automatically. So you may have to unmute yourself once I pull the guests in.
Christy, technically, I think I'm a guest.
Oh yeah, but I know you.
I know.
To know him is to love him, right?
Yeah. Okay, well, you're in.
Okay,
We
I
didn't
won't
say-
tell anyone.
Don't tell anyone. Your staff, I just, in my head. I think
Does
we-
he know the rule that when you're an employee of the village, you need all 5 to vote for you to get approval?
Yeah.
Does he know the rule?
Higher
You can't have
standard.
a-
You need 6.
Oh, right.
no fire alarm test on a day that your BZA is going up for approval?
Yeah, we canceled that test. I got a nice voicemail from the mayor.
Yes.
I guess he
Okay.
doesn't like hornstrobes.
We are at the 8:30 mark. I'm going to admit our guests.
7:30. 7:30.
Oh, 7:30.
Yeah, hopefully it's only 7:30.
Thank you. All right, our guests are joining us. Start recording.
Christy, are we good to go?
Give me just a second, please.
And is Andrew on?
Not that I see. We have a long list.
Oh.
Cabernet.
There's Andrew.
This is the best. Oh, that one's great. You have one that's already open. But this one's really great. Hey, Parker, look. Here. Show Grandpa.
I'm going to ask everyone that just joined us as a guest for the moment, if you could please mute yourself. And if you would please turn off your camera and until the time at which we will speak about your project.
And that's a little beret that goes on. All themed around. And if only we could get them to.
How do we turn off the camera here? Oh, down here.
There we go.
Okay. Wade, I think we're in good shape.
Ready to go? Thank you. Thanks, Christy.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Wade Frick. I'm the chair of the Village of Chagrin Falls Board of Zoning Appeals. This is the June 23rd, 2020 meeting of the BZA. This is our second meeting done by Zoom. The first meeting, I think, went very smoothly. And a special shout out and thank you to Christy Holmes for getting us through the technology, for Rob, Harry, anybody else in the village who's helping us with the technology. It worked well, and we'll hopefully not jinx ourselves for tonight. So thank you. We have just a couple items on the agenda tonight that we will work through. There are no minutes. I think we took care of our minutes last meeting, and we don't have minutes yet from the last meeting to approve. So we're moving right into swearing of witnesses. And I believe, Dale, do you do that? Do we do that right before each party speaks now?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do, thank you all, by the way, for attending. I don't know if I said that, but we really appreciate everyone who's on joining us. As I mentioned, we have two matters to address today. We take them in the order that they were received by Rob. And the way we'll do this is we will, I'll ask Rob to give us sort of the background on the matter that's been introduced. We'll ask for the applicant or the moving party to give a presentation stating whatever you'd like to state. The board can ask questions throughout that presentation. And then anybody who is on joining us tonight will have an opportunity to talk. I typically would ask first those who would speak in favor of the motion to speak, to direct their comments not at the applicant, but actually to those of us on the board And then we'll have an opportunity for anyone who's opposed to the application or motion that's before us to speak as well. So I want to make sure everyone has a chance to fully speak, especially since you're brave enough to weather all the technology and hang in there with us. So all that being said, we will proceed to the first matter, which is the application. It's an appeal, actually, by Mark Rogers and Hope Gumprecht. And by the way, I'm sorry, whenever anyone speaks, even though we can see your name or close there, something close to your name on the screen, if you could just identify who it is that's speaking. We do take minutes from these, even though we're on YouTube as well, but we will have typed up minutes. So if you could identify yourself and give us your address as well, that would be helpful. I guess, Dale, first, would you like to swear in the witnesses on this first matter?
I assume that either Mr. Rogers or Mrs. Gumprecht is going to go first. Whichever one is, if they show up on the screen, I'll swear them in.
Okay.
I'd say one thing before we swear people in. I was late to the meeting. I had trouble getting in and it was trying to bounce me as my wife's account. But did I miss the stating I was here?
Oh, we've got you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. So we're back to Mr. Rogers or
Right.
Ms. Gumprecht.
Are we unmuted?
Yes, hello.
Dale, you're up to you.
Okay,
And then,
who's going to speak first? Is it Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, I think I'll start out.
Okay, if you could raise your right hand and state after me, do you solemnly swear the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rob, could you please give us the background on the appeal, please?
Sure. Mr. Dennis Marino applied for a lot consolidation with the village for several parcels of land along Soul Other Lane. These are two parcels that he owns that were part of the original Soul Other Lane subdivision when it was created in the 1990s. They're considered leftover parcels from the original layout of the subdivision. He is looking to purchase a portion of land from a property along West Summit Street and include that piece of land with these other two parcels to create a site to eventually develop into a new residence. So he submitted his application. That review fell within the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission, and that matter came before Planning and Zoning on May 18th, 2020. And that information was sent out to everyone. The review of Planning and Zoning resulted in the approval of the creation of the parcel with the variance of requirements for the lot depth. Lot depth was the one item in looking at this parcel that did not meet our zoning code. And under the our zoning code, Planning and Zoning could approve and modify the required lot depth in cases of a subdivision parcel of land. So that's how the application came to be. Planning and Zoning did approve it. And then after it was approved to be created, I received the appeal application from Mark Rogers and Hope Gumprecht. And then that meeting, that's why the matter now falls to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
Rob, thank you. Dale, it might be helpful to frame this for everyone listening and for myself perhaps as well. The majority of the claims are of the matters that we hear are applications where an individual is seeking a variance to various zoning provisions of our code. And we have to make a determination based on the practical difficulty standard that was enumerated by the Ohio Supreme Court. It gives us a number of factors. This, however, is not at this point a variance issue. This is an appeal of a determination by planning and zoning. And as such, I believe our review is different. We will not be applying the 8 factors that we would apply in a variance. Here, we're actually looking at making a decision on whether, well, actually, Dale, I'd like you to frame the standard of review, because we're simply reviewing the decision, an appeal of a decision by planning and zoning. And we're not here tonight to talk about any variances, if I understand correct. Is that right, Dale? Or do you?
Yes, that's correct. We are given very little in the code for direction on the standard of review or what factors there are to be considered when you are hearing an appeal from a decision of the Planning Commission, or it could be the Architectural Review Board. And we've had a few from the Architectural Review Board had the same issue come up. So what you're doing is you're looking at whether the Planning Commission followed the directives given to them when they're being asked to modify the subdivision regulations to allow this lot to be subdivided and then consolidated. And so you look first at legality, did they meet the legal requirements? And then secondly, you look at whether their decision was either reasonable or whether there was some abuse of their discretion, because the code gives them the ability to modify, which implies that there's some discretion available to them in granting the modification on in this case, the ratio of the lot depth to the lot width. And so that's the way you have to look at it, is did they follow the code? And if they did, was their action reasonable, or did they abuse any discretion that was granted to them, which they do have here?
Okay, great, thank you. And just to be clear as well, the Ms. Gumprecht and Mr. Rogers were not the applicants. It was Mr. Marino who was the applicant who appeared before Planning and Zoning, but Mr. Rogers and Ms. Gumprecht appear as interested parties, right? What was done by Planning and Zoning has an impact that we're going to hear from them.
Correct.
Just want to make that clear, because usually we're hearing a presentation from the applicant who's trying to get a variance. This one is a little unusual in at least 2 regards, in that it's an appeal from Planning and Zoning, but also it's an interested party and not the actual applicant or the person who appeared before Planning and Zoning.
That they have standing because they're
Right.
neighbors, and they did oppose the Planning and Zoning Commission's action.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to frame that for everyone listening and for myself, and make sure I wasn't missing something. So thank you, Dale. So with that, we'll turn it. Rob, thank you for the background. Dale, thank you for your information and your help. We'll turn it over. I think Mr. Rogers said he would be leading off. So, sir, the platform is yours.
Wade, real quick, I do have multiple documents brought up showing the parcel, showing the appeal application, as well as the variance application. So whatever document you need me to bring up, let me know, and I'll show it on the screen.
Sure, and that applies to Mr. Rogers as well, too. If Rob can help you with any document that you think might be helpful, that you're aware of, that we can use that too.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think Rob has all the documents that we would have to present, so we can work with that.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess we also were a little bit confused by procedural, what was going on in planning and zoning and exactly what they were doing. It appears to me, I guess, what they were approving was a variation from the subdivision regulations, section 116105C, H1 and H4, which 116105 is conformity to zoning districts. Individual lot and building specifications shall be in accordance with the building districts and regulations listed in chapters 1119 through 1139 inclusive. 116105 H1 zoning conformance, lot size, width, and depth, and the minimum building setback line shall meet at a minimum the existing zoning regulations, except where the commission and village engineer determined hillside protection regulations apply. And then 116105 H4 minimum lot depth, no lot depth shall exceed 4.5 times the lot width or be less than 1.5 times the width, unless otherwise approved by the commission. So I'm guessing that the significant thing that they approved was a variation in 116105, because the lot is less than 1.5 times the depth is less than 1.5 times the width. Having said that, we prepared our documents based on the belief that in granting the lot split and consolidation, the planning and zoning was implicitly also approving what would essentially become variances to the zoning code. So we based our arguments on the Duncan factors. Based on our analysis of the Duncan factors, this project just, doesn't meet the criteria for an area variance or the area variances that would be needed to construct the house that was proposed on the lot split and consolidation plan. Gets a little bit confusing, but there was a proposed footprint for the house on the lot split and consolidation plan, which I think Rob is showing to us right now. And you can see at the 50-foot mark from the street, the lot width is, I think it's marked as 200 feet. And the lot depth is at the midpoint, I think is 90 feet. So, that's pretty substantial variation from both section 112503, the area yard and height regulations, which require a lot depth of 160 feet, or and in this case, the lot depth is, it's the mean horizontal distance of the lot measured between the front and rear lot lines. So the lot depth on the north side is 42.27 feet. On the south side, it's 158 feet. So the mean distance is 100.13 feet, or 59.87 feet under the minimum required lot depth, which is pretty substantial. And it's also, under 116105 H4, it's less than 1.5 times, the depth is less than 1.5 times the width. So that's, I think, a big variation that Planning and Zoning, or Planning and Zoning Commission did address directly. The other elements. Let me address the Duncan factor number 2, whether the variance is substantial. Yeah, it is very substantial because it's only 62.5% of the depth. It's an odd shaped lot, and it's going to require variances to build a house in that lot. The setback's going to be moved back. The backyard setback will be 30 feet. The proposed, there's a proposed incursion into the front setback based on the plan. The shallow backyard, essentially with a 30-foot depth to the backyard, the house being up against that 30-foot line, there's no place to put anything in the backyard. And when you look at the lot, because the front yard essentially is the front yard setback 50 foot meets the backyard setback, there is essentially almost no side yard there also on the north side. So Duncan factor number 2 is that this is a very substantial variance. Factor number 3, this is a neighborhood of large lots, and putting this house on a small lot, in the backyard of one of these large lots and adjacent to another large lot does change the character of the neighborhood. We along West Summit Street and even So Leather Lane, we have, we're used to our deep lots. we like the privacy, we like the wildlife, and like not being in these densely built neighborhoods. That,
Can I interrupt here for a second?
yes.
Can we take a step back and review the lot layout right now? Although we have background, I think we need to go take a step back and show the place of the lot that's been purchased and consolidated as an appeal approval, or as an approval by the planning and zoning. And then I think it would be better to start there. I'm sorry. There's a lot of background and we've read through it, but I need to see it on screen to understand the relationship. So some of the details are a little confusing from the minutes of the ARB meeting.
Sure.
Rachel, do you want me to explain these parcels as they're on the screen now?
Yes,
Yes, please.
please. I mean, I know where the parcels are, but I need to basically they can, this other person at 68 Summit has purchased another parcel and they want to merge it and build a house on it.
Well, the Coy property, which is the person that owns the parcels 27 and 28 that are consolidated, which is at the corner of Soleather and West Summit. Part of their parcel includes this rectangular piece of land back here. It's an oddly shaped parcel of land. So Mr. Marino wants to purchase, and the Coys have agreed to sell just this section of that back parcel, and then join it with parcels number 39 and 38 as shown in this map. And then make a triangular shaped separate parcel by doing that. So it'd be a lot splitting off this rectangular piece of land from parcel 28, and then a consolidation of that piece of land with 39 and 38 to create one parcel.
And do we have the total square footage of that 3 parcel combined lot?
I believe we do. I have to look that up if you give me a few minutes.
Was that what you were
I can
showing
tell
on
you
the
that-
other page?
I can tell you that the square footage of all 3 of these parcels combined does exceed the required square footage for the zoning code. So as far as square footage, it meets the requirement. I will look that up.
Okay, go back to that other page. I think that was showing the dimensions of the lot. That's the triangular lot right there.
Yes,
And then you had some measurements on the other tab that there's the square, that's now the newly combined triangular lot right there, correct?
yes. So it's right
Okay.
along here where the cursor is, goes all the way up, comes down. So on the northern part of it, the side yard is 42.27 feet. On the southern part, I think I have to measure that, look at that a little differently.
158.
Yeah, I have to, let me get my measurements correct here. One 158.39 feet as you go along the southern side yard. The frontage along the streets. (240 feet), 240.58 feet is the length along the front. In the back,
206.
221, yeah.
Okay.
221.63 feet across the back.
And what's the minimum?
The total lot square footage added together is 20,385 square feet. The required lot size in an R1 100 zoning district is 20,000. So it exceeds it by 385 square feet.
And is there a minimum length of footage? I know it meets the frontage footage, but is that side yard meet standard
No,
footage?
the side yard, well, there's no side yard length. There's a side yard setback.
Okay, but there's
10
no length
10 foot.
required?
10-foot side yard setback required, which that would be to whatever building you're gonna build. And
Right,
looking at the lot itself, the only thing that would apply to just the lot without the structure would be the lot depth. And the lot depth in the R1 100 is 160 feet. Let me go to my zoning review letter. I have that more clearly spelled out. Okay. When measuring the mean, the lot depth, you look at the mean horizontal distance, which would be at the center of the lot. And you measure back at that line. And it looks like on this copy, we've measured that at a 90-foot depth. 160 is required.
And at no point on the property is it 160 feet.
Correct. Even at the one side, it's 158 feet.
Right. Okay, Rachel, is that helpful? That answer your questions?
yes, that answers for now. One last question, real quick though, if you go back to, I think it's tab 4, can we understand now directly then, if you can scroll up a little, we can barely see that 28 lot. At least I can't there. So directly then, the Rogers parcel is directly right there.
It
Okay,
would be right here. So the
Gotcha.
Rogers parcel comes back and does touch the side yard or this part of the parcel.
and who owns parcels 39 and 38? Is it owned by the homeowners association?
It's owned by Dennis Marino.
Oh, it already is, but they're empty lots.
Correct.
Correct.
And he had bought them from where?
They were part of the subdivision. He's the original
He's the original.
developer of the subdivision.
I understand. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to clarify a little bit more, Hope and I actually own the property that abuts the southern or south eastern line of the proposed lot, as well as the sort of the northwestern side. So, yeah, this is the property here on the map that the house is closer to 120. And you can see that our property basically sort of makes a jog around the proposed lot up to 65 So Leather Lane. So, yeah, we own, most of the adjacent property to this. And I think the Sadowskis at 65 are the others adjacent, as well as the Coys. Oh, did you have something?
Oh, I know, some points we'll give them a history of how that ended up with the two, with the Marinos.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so we just, I guess we're under the belief that by approving the lot split and consolidation, there is some approval of variances that are going to be implicit in that in order to make it buildable. Don't know for sure if that's correct or not, but our objections are based largely on the idea that we're going to have potentially have a new house constructed on the high point of this piece of property here in the 10 feet from that southern property line that abuts us, and 30 feet from the eastern line. So essentially, it's going to jam a house right up against our property there, and it'll be fairly visible. I mean, we had some photographs that show the views from the back of the house into the area that would have the house built in it. you know, right now, you know, we can look through our woods, we can see the Sadowski house. Although there is a fair amount of woods in between us and that house. You know, this proposed lot would have a new house on it, which would be considerably closer to our house. Other issues that we could potentially that we are concerned about will be runoff. You know, we have a pretty steep hillside. Most of the back end of our lot at 120, and then almost all of the back end of our adjacent lot at 68, which is immediately to the east of the 120 lot in the back, is ravine. You know, we have you know, significant issues with runoff and erosion that we have to deal with back there. Any construction that occurs on this proposed consolidated lot, you know, it's going to change the vegetation cover. You know, the house, you know, itself creates impermeable surface, which needs to be drained, you know, away from our lot. Plus, you know, removing the trees and planting grass and putting driveway creates, you know, a lot less permeable surface that will potentially increase the runoff and increase our erosion problems that we're already trying to mitigate. So, and not that we necessarily have to address the Duncan factors, but you know, this circumstance here, you know, this was something that this has existed for 34 years. You know, these two little triangle lots. It's been quite a long time, you know, since So Leather Lane was developed, and the you know, there wasn't any expectation when So Leather Lane was developed that there was going to be access for these additional two lots 13 and 14, I think, as they're called in So Leather Lane, to be developed. But the developer held on to these properties for, you know, 33 years or more, you know, hoping to, you know, be able to purchase property from us to create lots out of it. You know, we haven't wanted to sell. We prefer to use our property the way that we're using it. We don't think that it's appropriate for development. We think that given the hillside slippage issues in the region and adjacent property, that you know, we wouldn't want to take the risk of selling it to someone to build on. I think it would potentially be unstable. So, you know, there was no real expectation at the time that So Leather Lane was developed that these little slivers of property ever would be buildable lots. And so, you know, essentially the circumstances were self-created by the developer. Instead of splitting these slivers of land off to you know, adjacent properties, or, you know, trying to sell them to, I think it was the Griffiths that lived in 136 West Summit at the time. You know, they chose to hang on to them. So, you know, I don't think that you know, they can claim a hardship based on the fact that they own these two slivers of property. They had an opportunity to dispose of them in the past, and instead chose to retain them. You know, I think, you know, the spirit intent of the zoning code really is to protect the interests of the property owners in the village. You know, and the interests, you know, include our interests, include the interests of our neighbors. And I think of all of the people along West Summit Street that have their large lots and you know, appreciate having the extra space behind the you know, behind the houses, the large backyards. You know, we're not the only place in the village that has this. I know other lots like along Ridgewood Road and some along you know, East Washington and Bell Street have similar situation. And there's value to that. You know, those properties are worth more because they have the large lots and they have the deep views. and the tree, yeah, and the tree cover. So, yeah, I skipping back around the Duncan factors that I didn't necessarily need to address. You know, I think it is an alteration of the character of the neighborhood, and I think that our property and adjoining properties will suffer a detriment as a consequence of you know, permitting development of this consolidated lot. You know, the lot itself isn't an issue, but you know, because the lot's being consolidated for the purpose of trying to build a house on it, you know, the subsequent construction and you know, use of the property as a building lot would be detrimental to our interests and the interests of our neighbors. And I think that would be sufficient to address it. If there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Is there any way we could see the topology of that lot? I think you mentioned it has a significant hillside. And I
Yeah.
guess, even though I'm familiar, I'm having a hard time picturing what kind of
Stand by.
terrain that has.
I think there's a topo map in here somewhere.
Right there.
Right, but can you, there you go.
So you're looking at about every line is about 2 foot difference between lines. So you have, say here where my cursor is 990 feet, and that line there is 980. So you have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. So about 2 foot of grade change between lines.
So you can see it drops off pretty steeply as we go to the east and then back towards 65 So Leather.
On your property.
Yes. Yeah, and that, you know, that's part of the reason we chose not to even consider selling property. You know, other than preserving our view is, you know, it's just, you know, it's just not appropriate to develop, to build on the back of that piece of property.
Other questions of,
Sorry, why do you think it's not appropriate to build on that piece?
So it's a steep hillside. You can see from the property line, you know, it drops off.
Each line is only 2 feet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 feet. I'm looking at your property. I'm just trying to understand the depth. It doesn't seem.
2, 4.
Oh, right here is not an issue.
Yeah, back here, it's not so big, but when you go towards the north end of the property,
That's not their property. Can you,
that's our property. Right. This,
And that's what they want to buy.
I thought your property's down lower here. Sorry, I'm turned around on the triangle.
so our property borders the south side of the back of that proposed lot, and it borders all of the east side of the proposed lot.
So this, Rachel, this whole
I
area
see,
here
you're
where
right.
my
That's the
cursor
back.
is-
I'm sorry. I
Yeah.
understand. Sorry, that's the backside of your property right there. That's your, yeah, okay,
Yes, this is
Yeah.
all the Rogers Gumpert property.
okay.
Right.
Which is what they wanted.
Yeah.
Get 2 more lots out of it.
So it does go pretty deep.
Yeah. It's a pretty steep ravine. And there have been erosion problems in the neighborhood previously at, you know, 75 So Leather. You know, there has been some significant slippage there. And
Right, but your house sits
Oh,
up that way.
the house, yeah, the house is fine. The
Yeah,
house is up here.
okay.
It's the back of the property. So, you know, we're concerned about erosion coming off of neighbor properties into ours. You know, we already have a off of 65. There is a drain pipe that comes off the back there that's already created a gully. You know, granted, it was 33 years ago, and we essentially inherited it from my Hope's parents with the, you know, the existing problem. But you know, it's creating a gully that just keeps getting deeper and deeper every time it rains hard. So
I don't know, maybe it would help. You want to.
Were you ever, given the opportunity to purchase those 2 parcels?
No.
But do you want to add that they've continually tried to buy this? Or
Why don't you speak?
Can I swear in, Mr. Markowitz?
I think Hope would like to speak if she can.
Because I can give you a little.
Yeah,
history.
can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Do solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, so maybe it will help if I give a really brief history. The Marinos gave this, I think, before, but these 2 triangles were kept when the Soul Leather Lane plat was created in about 1985 with the intention that they would eventually be able to purchase property from 2 additional landowners. The portion that the Coys have entered into a partnership to develop now, and then this rear portion of 120 that we currently own. So we, every time something changes, you know, someone sells, someone gets divorced, someone dies, we would hear from them about that. We never wanted to sell because we like the deep lots, the privacy, the view, the wildlife, etc. And then more recently with issues with soil instability, specifically in Soul Leather Lane with 75, just on the other side of 65, and then general issues that we've known about for a long time. We're very concerned about any soil disturbance adjacent to the lot at 65 or number 12 on this plat, because we're concerned that that could be a problem for that house. It's built 7 feet from the property line, which was code at the time. So we have also felt that we didn't want to have anything to do with selling property that would clearly require the village to evaluate in terms of hillside building ordinance, and that could potentially damage another structure. We didn't want to take that chance. So that is how the Marinos have ended up with the 2 triangles left that they are now trying to consolidate with the Coy parcel. I hope that helps a little bit with the background and the history.
Thank you. It looks to me like, having walked there briefly, your back piece of property would be entirely unbuildable. Is
We
that
think
correct? I
so.
mean, it's a pretty steep gully or valley or whatever you want to
Yes.
call it.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
We believe it's much more valuable as green space and to manage surface water runoff.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the board for Mr. Rogers or Ms. Gumprecht? Okay, no other questions? Is there anybody, and I guess this would be to Christie, is there anybody
I had a
waiting?
question. I'm sorry, Wade, I didn't realize I
Yeah.
was. Lisa Kramer, is the lot, if it is consolidated, is the triangular lot, do we know that it's buildable?
As it's shown here on the screen, the only part of the footprint shown that would not be in compliance would be this section of the attached garage, if they use the same footprint. The 10-foot side yard setback does meet code requirements. There is one interesting section of the code for the rear yard in the R1 100 district. The required rear yard setback is 50 foot or 30% of lot depth, whichever is less. So when you look at the lot depth, if it's an approved lot, the lot depth is only 90 feet. So when you take 30% of that, the 30 foot does meet requirement based on the lot depth if the lot is approved.
Does, you said does
But
mean.
the general R1 100 district, it's a 50-foot setback is the code,
Mhm.
if it was a fully conforming lot.
Right.
Other questions of Ms. Rogers or Ms. Gumprecht?
Just going back to that proposed footprint of that house right there that they're showing. What size house does that become?
We didn't get too far into it other than it would be a two-story house, similar to others in the area. I believe Mr. Marino is, I believe, on tonight, and he could answer those
Okay.
questions. You wanna
Yeah,
direct
I mean,
those to him?
it looks, I don't know if anything's drawn to scale, significantly smaller in order to meet a lot of these lot requirements because of this weird lot than the other houses in the area.
I believe it would meet our required square footage. It would not exceed this required square footage. Mr. Marino can probably better speak
Okay.
to his intent for the lot.
I mean, the whole footprint fits in the middle of that other house across the street.
Other questions for Mr. Rogers, Ms. Gumbrecht? Okay, then Christie, is there anybody who's waiting to speak in favor of granting the appeal?
At this point, any participants who would like to speak, you're welcome to unmute yourself and request to be sworn in by Dale, our law director.
So if anyone, if people are unmuted, again, if there's anybody who would like to speak in favor of the appeal, we'll start with you. Is there anyone out there who would like to speak in favor of the appeal?
In addition, Wade, this is a different way that I've established the meeting. So I want to give participants a second way to let me know they'd like to speak. And that is by providing me a thumbs up with a symbol, which will appear next to their name and let me know that they'd like to speak. So we'll give people a moment to perhaps find that feature as well.
Okay. And again, at this point, anyone who's listening, we're first taking feedback or thoughts of those who would agree with the appeal. And Christy, let me know when you've had enough time to gauge if we have anyone or not on that.
Yeah, I feel like we've sufficiently given folks two different options to let me know, and no one has piped up yet.
Okay, well, if they do, if someone appears, we'll have them flag you. Then I'd ask if there's anyone on the call who would like to speak in opposition to the appeal.
Again, participants have the option to unmute themselves. And you could let us know that way, or you could also give me a thumbs up using the symbols provided. Wade, if you'll give me a moment to hop over to YouTube,
Sure.
I would like to check that option to see if anyone has
Absolutely. Want to make sure we don't miss anybody.
written in comments.
While we're waiting, I had a question for you, Rob.
Yes.
When the planning and zoning granted this lot consolidation, did they, I thought I read somewhere in their minutes that they made a comment to, you know, the design of the house can't change, like no variances could be, if they grant this, no variances could be granted or something along those lines. Is that?
Let me take a look here and see what I can find. I've got the letter up now.
I don't remember that, Jim. I might be wrong, but I don't remember that they said.
It just says the house is to be built as cited on the plans. In other words, don't say you're gonna build this house and then go and be like, just kidding, we're gonna build another house and try to get all these variances.
Here, I do have up on the screen, in the motion that was approved, that was made by Mrs. Pelosi. It states, I also believe that I trust that Marino's commitment to keep it within the zoning requirements, except for that corner of that garage. So that was part of the motion. There was also part of the motion to stipulate that all water runoff would be directed to the storm sewers on Solother Lane and not to the East Hill side. If you will.
I think what you're reading was only one person saying it as they were voting too. I don't think
That
it was
was the motion that ended up being passed.
right.
Yes.
So, I
that
mean,
was that was one person's comments in their motion.
So I guess the answer to your question, Jim, is I don't think they condition any, the vote wasn't conditioned upon no variances. One person said, I would trust that you continue to need that little tiny chunk, or that chunk, but that was it.
Yeah, there was no official conditions in there. It was a comment made in the motion.
I see the chat, Christy, I don't know, do you see that Rob Dubiak wants to speak?
I did, and I allowed him, he now has video and is able to speak. Dale, could you swear him in, please?
Sure. Mr. Dubiak, can you raise your right hand? I can't see him yet.
He's on my video. He's being
Yeah.
recorded.
Okay. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Rob, we can't hear you.
How's that?
Good.
Now we can
There
see
you
you.
are.
Okay. Okay.
So I'll swear you in again. Do you solemnly swear?
I won't be, but Mr. Marcos, I won't be providing any testimony, just arguments of counsel, but I do have Mr. Marino here in attendance who will be offering any testimony or questions that the board may have.
That's fine.
Rob, the floor is yours.
Thank you. My name is Rob Dubiak from the law firm of Dubiak Nelson. I'm here as counsel for Mr. Marino and Mr. Bob Coy. As it was indicated early on in the hearing, this is an appeal of the determination by Planning and Zoning from last month. At Planning and Zoning last month, the parties appeared, both Mr. Marino and Mr. Coy, and presented the written application they submitted to the village and provided testimony and evidence and explained the project. That hearing was approximately 2 hours long. The Rogers were there and also participated in the discussion and raised a number of the same issues or concerns or opinions that they expressed today. As Mr. Markowitz indicated at the beginning of this hearing, this is not an analysis of the 8 factors of 1111.07. Rather, it is a determination by the Board of Zoning Appeals to determine whether Planning and Zoning followed the requirements of the Chagrin Falls zoning code and acted reasonably or not. Certainly under section 1111.07, the Planning and Zoning Board has the ability to vary, modify, or waive certain provisions of the Planning and Zoning Code. So I would submit to the Board of Zoning Appeals that Planning and Zoning did follow the requirements of the code. Then the next question is whether they acted unreasonably or not, and whether they abused their discretion. Again, they listened to the parties for 2 hours, considered all the issues. I believe Mr. Rogers in his presentation today confirmed that all 8 factors were discussed and addressed, and he certainly had an opportunity to express his opinions, which is simply what he appears to be doing here tonight. But that is not, I would submit, the purpose of tonight's hearing. That is to determine whether or not Planning and Zoning abused its discretion in making the decision that it came up with. And I have not heard any evidence or any allegations that Planning and Zoning acted unreasonably or abused their discretion.
Hey, Rob, this is Wade, can you point me to the code, where in the code it says reasonable or abusive discretion is the standard? I didn't see that, and was grasping for anything to help us with our standard of review.
The code does appear to be ambiguous as to the Board of Zoning Appeals review or discretion, but it does indicate that you are to review the decision of the different agencies, whether it be ARB or the commission. And it certainly appears from an overall reading of the code that the BZA has the ability to review the decision of planning and zoning. It certainly isn't, from my reading of the code, to be a fresh reading and review of the 8 factors, rather a review of the decision by planning and zoning. Also, I believe there is case law authority regarding general review.
Okay, because I just want to make sure I didn't see abuse of discretion anywhere, and so I understand. I understand what you're saying. Okay, Rob, is that the extent? Did you say Mr. Marino wants to speak as well? Are there questions? Well, I guess first are the questions of Mr. Dubiak from the board. Okay, Allison, that means none. Mr. Marino, does Mr. Marino want to speak?
I don't believe Mr. Marino wants to make any additional comments, but
Okay.
he is certainly here if any of the members of the Board of Zoning Appeals would like to ask him any questions
Gotcha.
about the project.
So board members, any questions for Mr. Marino or for Rob, for Mr. Dubiak? Okay, Christie, is there anyone else waiting who would like to be heard? We've moved into opposition to the appeal, but just one more time, is there anyone on either side of the issue that hasn't had a chance to speak?
Let's speak.
This is Hope Gumpright Rogers. Can I speak again? Can you hear me?
Sure. Yes.
Okay. I just wanted to address the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting on May 18th. Initially, when we were first made aware of this in March, it was going to come to Board of Zoning Appeals. And then when we learned again after the sudden cancellations, it was going to Planning and Zoning. So when we were the Planning and Zoning Committee, the Duncan factors that we were aware of and thought were relevant were not part of that discussion. Not specifically addressed like you guys would normally run through those. And then secondarily, the chairman, Patty Baker, stated as the meeting was coming to a vote that some of these zoning issues, the fact that this is not compliant with our R1100 zoning or with the subdivision zoning could be addressed by Board of Zoning Appeals, that's the place for that, something to that effect. It's in the notes. I just saw those notes a little bit right at the end. So that's why we thought that when we were coming here, it again would be the Duncan factors. At some point, those would come into play. We're not sure where because the procedure is confusing for us. So I apologize for our being off with that. But just so you understand, we're kind of confused about the procedure.
No need to apologize. This is confusing stuff. It's important stuff. And it's why I wanted to say that out at the beginning, make sure Dale set us all straight, but no need to apologize. I appreciate your presentation.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, can I clarify one thing?
Sure.
There is nothing in our code that requires the Planning Commission to use the Duncan factors. The Supreme Court of Ohio created the Duncan factors out of, let's say, thin air. They made up the factors on their own. There was nothing in the Ohio Revised Code that mandated that they do that. They just determined that for area variances, you would follow the Duncan factors. The Planning Commission here is dealing with the shape and size of a lot, which has some similarities to what you do when the Board of Zoning Appeals is considering an area variance request. but I don't see that we have to imply or infer that the planning commission has to follow the Duncan factors. I think that the code could have set whatever factors it wanted, and easily could have done what we did for the Board of Zoning Appeals, which was we specified what the standard would be for use variances and then followed the Duncan factors for area variances. So my interpretation is that in following the mandates from Chapter 2506 of the Ohio Revised Code, which is the Ohio Administrative Appeals Act, that you review the Planning Commission decision in a similar way to what the Common Pleas Court would review your decisions, which is you look to see if it's unconstitutional, whether it's illegal, whether it's unreasonable, or whether it's an abuse of discretion. And so that's why I used those criteria for you tonight. And to me, it's the Planning Commission, you have to have some standard for what they're supposed to do. And that's why I would rely on reasonableness for their decision.
All right, thanks. Is there anybody who hasn't had, first of all, I guess board members, any questions, any final questions?
Yeah, I guess one of my thoughts is in response to what Ms. Rogers said is, regardless of whether we agree with their application or whether we determine that that P&Z did not abuse their discretion, this would conceivably still have to come back to us with respect to variances. It's just,
Yes.
I mean, I don't see how it wouldn't.
Right now, as it stands, there's a Dale, if you not Dale, I'm sorry, Rob, if you could put the cursor over the little tiny corner of the garage. Right now, Lisa, that's right. As this crude drawing is done, that part would come before us for a potential variance.
And that's because the lot depth has been.
That section is not related to the lot depth. That's in the required 50-foot front yard.
But I'm saying the reason there's nothing else that they would have to request from us is because P&Z has basically exempted the lot depth in granting this in approving the consolidation.
That's correct.
Is that right?
In essence, what they did is they created a grandfathered lot, even though it's a new consolidation.
Right.
And this is Rob Dubiak, and just as a side note, the anticipated house, the home size is going to be in around the 3,200 to 4,000 square foot range. I know someone had asked that earlier.
Okay. Other questions from the board? Christy, I'd ask one more time, is anybody waving their hands, thumbs up, chat, anything else that wants to say anything?
Well said. I am looking now. I have no feedback from any participant.
And Rob, you would have, as you do with all BZA appeals or motions before us, or applications before us, I should say, you've given notice to all the people effectively in Stowe Leather and on West Summit. As
everybody within 300 foot.
Okay. Okay, if there's nothing else, what I would ask is a motion from a member of the board, as we always do, we'll do in the affirmative. So a motion to approve the appeal requested by Mr. Rogers and Ms. Gumbrecht.
Okay, so I just want to make sure we're clear on the board that I'm going to make a motion in the affirmative, which means you're supporting the application of the appeal.
Correct.
Meaning, if you vote yes to the affirmative motion, you are overturning the ARB decision. I just want to make sure everybody understands how this works.
P&Z.
Yes.
Oh, P&Z, sorry. I said ARB. Okay. So I'd like to make a motion on behalf of the application for 120 West Summit application to appeal the approval to consolidate 3 parcels in the on Soul Leather Lane as a purchase from the Coy residents. We have reviewed that the review of the parcels was done under the planning and zoning code, and their responsibilities to review 116105 design standards. And there's many factors underneath those design standards of which planning and zoning utilize to make their decision and review of the lot consolidation. They have design standards, making sure the lot is buildable, any individual lot is in conforming shape. Physical considerations in 116105D were considered, the natural land use and stability of land. Also in 1161.05H, which deals with the actual lots. There were many portions of the code that were reviewed by them discussing these lots, which included the minimum lot depth, which was reviewed and discovered that they could, that they might not meet the lot depth, and that was reviewed that a 4.5 to 1 lot depth ratio can be determined to be overridden to range from other, to range in a more equivalent depth measurement. There was other factors used in that 116105 as well that were reviewed. In the end, the planning and zoning determined that the lots would be allowed to be consolidated after purchase, and that it did meet all the requirements. In reviewing all of the factors that the P&Z reviewed, they did follow the code. They discussed all the portions of the different code that would be applicable here. They did acknowledge the implicit variances that would be needed to build on this lot. And at this point in time, the lot was presented to have a minimal variance. However, they the acting reasonably, this is hard to do in the affirmative, I'm sorry. The appeal is saying that they did not act reasonably under the 116105, that there are physical considerations for the natural land use that they did not consider, considering lot runoff and other soil disturbing. They also have found in their appeal that they are allowing a non-conforming grandfather lot to become conforming in the consolidation, and using lot ratio and other setback or other depth ratios in the code that allow for this, and therefore potentially abusing their discretion in interpreting how to realign calculations in the lot. And then lastly, the reality is that the topology of the land makes it a very difficult lot to build on, and to require the drainage requirements that P&Z said they would like to drain into the sewage. And so the topology of the lot creates some difficulty in potentially disturbing the land that should have been discussed in the physical, which was discussed but interpreted to be okay in 116105D, physical considerations. For all of those reasons, the appeal, the motion is to approve the appeal to not allow the consolidation.
Is there a second? Sorry, was
Seconded
that
by
Jim?
Jim.
Yep.
Yeah,
Wait,
Jim.
excuse me one second. At the very end, I think you said to not allow the appeal.
I meant to allow the appeal, which doesn't allow the consolidation.
Correct. Okay, thank you.
Second,
Who's the second?
me, Lisa.
Okay,
Okay, Rob, roll.
Frick.
If this had come before us right out of the gate as a BZA matter, I would have serious concerns under the Duncan factors. However, and not to overthink this or over lawyer it, I believe our charter here is different, and we're looking at reasonableness of what planning and zoning did, as well as whether they abused their discretion. And while I may not agree with the decision, I don't think that they were unreasonable, nor do I think they abused their discretion. I would have, if this comes back before us with variances, I certainly will consider those very carefully. But I would vote no to the motion, just because I believe that I don't think we can show that planning and zoning abused their discretion or was unreasonable.
Okay, Holdren?
Yeah, I agree with what Wade stated. I think the planning and zoning, they followed the code in granting this consolidation. And so I would vote no on this appeal.
Kramer?
I am going to vote no as well, although I agree with Wade that I think this is it's a challenge to see how this all turns out in terms of what's built on this lot. And I understand the concerns, especially relative to the hillside issues. You know, to just simply say you have to make all of the water go to a certain place is way easier said than done. So I think there's going to be a lot of concerns when they come back. But I think in terms of the evaluation that was done by P&Z with respect to the lot consolidation, I don't see an abuse of discretion in the way that was done. So I would vote no.
Okay, Rocky?
I do believe that P&Z has done their due diligence in looking at the code, and I don't think that there was any abuse of power in any of this. So I am going to have to vote no.
Freshman Johnson?
I'll also vote no on the appeal. They acted reasonably under the code, and I believe they did a thorough review and acted under reasonably and followed the code. I also will say, you know, the risk of doing this is up to the owner. This is a very awkward lot. It's going to be very difficult to build the house that they want. It's a very large house on this one of the smallest lots you can do, and I would just be very weary of the ability to move forward with the plans as is, but I guess that's up to them to move forward in buying the lot. I vote no.
Okay.
So what that means then is the council has 15 days to reconsider what we have done. So the short form of all that is nothing will happen for 15 days. And 3 members of council can choose to bring this up to council where it can be considered another time. So for 15 days, nothing, an appeal can be filed. And if that does not happen, if the 3 members of council do not do that, then the decision of PZA will be, P&Z, I'm sorry, will be final 15 days from now. And Rob, you will let Mr. Marino, as well as the
Yes.
Rogers and Gumprex, know if
Yes.
15 days have come and gone with no appeal.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time. Good luck to all. But again, thanks for your time and your input. We will move now into our second item, which is the application of Jim Finley, 70 East Summit Street. And Rob, if you could give us the background on this application, please.
Stand by as I load up the documents.
Okay.
Okay. Let me switch my files over. Give me 1 second.
Sure.
Okay, I'm ready here. This is an application for Jim and Beth Finley, 70 East Washington Street. permanent parcel 931-13-008. They're in the R160 zoning district. They're proposing to construct a new attached garage to their existing house. The garage went before the Architectural Board of Review on June 16th, and they were granted preliminary approval with the addition of an east elevation window. In the zoning review of this, they proposed to build a structure 2 foot and 8 inches from the proposed side yard lot line to the east. Our code requires a 5-foot side yard setback. So they are 2 foot 4 inches less than the code requirement. And that's the variance request that's before us today.
Okay, one single variance request. All right, side yard setback. Okay, who's, Mr. Finley, are you ready? Are you speaking, I assume?
No, I think Hallie Novak is speaking. She's
Okay.
the architect. She makes the big bucks.
Wow, then absolutely.
Hallie, we can't hear you.
And Rob will need to swear her in, please.
Dale?
And yeah,
Is Hallie with us now?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you now. Can you raise your right hand? Do you have your camera on? Are you on YouTube or on Zoom?
I'm on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, we're not seeing you, but anyhow.
I can see
Can
her.
Yeah, I can see her.
Okay, if you're on a laptop, I'm not seeing a gallery view for some reason.
I can see her.
Yeah, the way Christie did it, I don't see it, but that's fine. Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you'll give to the Board of Zoning Appeals will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Now I see you.
okay, Hallie, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, everyone. Yeah, as I was saying, I'm here from Horton Harper Architects. We've been working with Jim to design his new garage addition. As you can see on the site plan here.
Hey, Hallie, I'm sorry. At least for me, it's a little fuzzy. I don't know if you can get closer to your
Yeah.
to the mic or.
Can you hear me better now?
I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. All right. So yeah, as I was saying, we're working on his new garage addition that we're proposing to be located on the east side of his existing residence. The addition would be for a 2-car garage with some storage above, and then also a new boot mudroom that would attach the addition to the existing house. As mentioned, we are asking for a variance at the side yard. We're proposing a 2 foot 8 foot setback, and we strongly feel that this is, the minimum variance we can request to still be able to fit a 2-car garage on this property. 2-car garages seem pretty common on the street. I think there's 5 on this side of the street to the next intersection having front-loaded garages. And also mentioned, we went in front of the Architectural Board of Review last week, and they had mainly just positive things to say about the scale of the addition as well as the detailing of it. We are trying to keep right now we have a 12-foot setback to the neighbor's house to the east, and that's taken to like a deck structure set further south on the site. And then that setback would increase where their house jogs, as you can see. The idea of pushing the garage further south of the south on the site, making it a detached garage, while that was considered, it is our opinion that that's not feasible due to the existing topography from the existing driveway. Further south on the lawn, there's over an 8-foot drop in topography, which is, it seems to be pretty typical on this side of East Summit Street. And then again, to turn the garage,
to get the garage door facing away from the street is not possible just due to the existing setback of the house. Yeah, I think that's pretty much the overview. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Hallie, the garage is proposed at 20 feet, 2.5 inches wide. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
And is that, I haven't measured garages in a while. You said that's the minimum you feel comfortable with for a 2-car garage?
I think if anything, we're getting to be a very, very narrow garage compared to what is typical. We're showing a 16-foot garage door there. Typically you'd want 3 feet, say, on each side of that garage door. We're definitely less than that. So I really feel like we have tried as best we can to condense the width and compress that width and give us more setback. However, I do think what we're proposing here is what is required to make the garage feasible.
Thank you. Other questions from the board?
I believe you said that if you put the garage in the back, either detached or attached, there's a big slope there. You broke up there for a second. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. There's at least an 8-foot drop, kind of where the front of the garage door would have to be to the back of the garage. It's very light in there, but as you can see, kind of at the rear of where we're showing the garage now, the grade is about at say 10-16 roughly, and then pushing that back further on the site, to the south property line, we're down to 106. So just from there, that's an 11-foot drop. So it's, we wouldn't obviously be right at the property line, but there is a very significant fall in grade there. And there's also a few trees located just south of that retaining wall that the owner is hoping to retain.
And there's no existing, there's existing driveway, but there's no existing garage back there.
That's correct.
And even if you moved it straight back, wouldn't you still have the same side yard setback
That's
issue?
also correct, yes.
Okay. Other questions of the board?
There's no garage associated with this house right now?
So what you're seeing is where the new garage addition is right now. That's just driveway. Where the boot room is located, there is like a kind of like a it's like a structure kind of covering a stairwell down to the basement. But yeah, we aren't planning to remove any structure.
Okay.
Any other questions from the board? Okay, Hallie, is that, I didn't mean to interrupt you at all. Are you presented what you wanted to present?
Yeah, I believe so. Thank you.
Okay. Christy, can you see, is there anybody waiting to talk, I guess, first in favor of the application?
Wade, I don't see any. I'll reiterate how folks can let me know that they'd like to speak. You can unmute and identify yourself. You could choose to show me a symbol such as a thumbs up, or you can utilize the chat. We'll wait for a moment. No one has identified they'd like to speak.
Okay, and then I assume that applies to the next category, but I'll ask as well, just to be thorough. Is anyone waiting to talk in opposition to the application?
Waiting to see if anyone identifies themselves.
While we're waiting, Rob, you also gave notice as required by the code in this one.
Yes, 300 foot in each direction.
No one is wishing to speak.
Okay, final questions of the board? We will entertain a motion.
All right, I would like to make a motion to approve a variance for the property 70 East Summit Street, a variance to section 112503G, side yard setback. The code says they need a 5-foot side yard setback. The applicant is requesting a 2-foot 4-inch variance for a 2-foot 8-inch setback. The property will still yield a reasonable return without the variance. I do not feel the variance is substantial. The essential character of the neighborhood, which is in this case is very important, at least to me, I do not think would be substantially altered. At least not in the negative way. I think adding this garage will actually improve the neighborhood, the look of the neighborhood. The variance will not adversely affect the delivery of governmental services. The property owner did purchase the property or did not purchase the property with the knowledge of the zoning restriction. And I do not feel the property owner can predicament can feasibly be obviated through any other means than other than a variance. We already talked about how the garage can be located nowhere else on the property except for where it was presented. And I believe the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice would be done in granting this variance. And the variance is not based on circumstances that are self-created by the applicant. For these reasons, I make the motion to approve the variance.
Second,
Who's that seconded?
Lisa.
Lee second, okay.
Roll, please.
Freshman Johnson,
Rachel, we lost you.
Sorry, is that better?
yep.
Yes.
That was weird. I vote aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
Frick,
Aye for all the reasons stated in the motion.
Holdren,
I vote aye.
Kramer,
Aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
Rocky.
Aye for the reasons stated in the motion.
All right, so Mr. Finley, if you were listening before, what happens is council has 15 days. 3 members of council can choose to appeal this decision within 15 days. If that doesn't happen, you'll get notice from Rob close to day 15, if not day 15, that your variance request has been granted and you're free to proceed to whatever the next step is. So 15 days will come and go before you can claim your variance.
Copy that. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good luck to you. Members of the board, anything else coming before us?
Nope.
I guess the one thing is, Dale, could you remind us on Thursday, there will be the hearing at a council of 17 River Street.
Right.
And remind us of our ability or lack thereof to offer evidence, thoughts, opinions to those of us who may join that meeting.
Sure, you're free to sit there and listen, and that's where it ends. Because if you were to testify, it could create a very bad precedent. We don't want anybody who's a decision maker in the village to ever have to justify how they made their decision, why they made their decision. And so if you do that at the council meeting, then you could end up becoming a witness in the appeal, whereas under law in Ohio, if you don't speak up and you don't express your opinion after the meeting's over, and you only express it during the meeting, you cannot be called as a witness to explain your rationale or your thought process. It's something that the law favors the ability for you to be able to freely be able to decide matters without being fearful that you'll be put on the stand and your opinion challenged. But if you do go to a meeting and then speak your opinion about what the next board up should be doing, then you could end up waiving that privilege, and we don't want to ever see that happen.
So what does that do for Andrew then, who's put in the awkward position of having been on the BZA and will be, well, I assume will be presenting to council?
I was just going to ask that question.
Well, Andrew's not, he's not testifying. He's sitting on council the same way he is tonight on the Board of Zoning Appeals. So he's not giving his opinion as a Board of Zoning Appeals member as to what the council should do, but as the charter mandated member of the board who's on council, he is expressing his opinion as a councilman. And again, if that's all he does, then he can't be questioned in court and can't be asked to give his opinion or to explain the rationale for his decision.
Okay, I think I got.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Well, I think that's it. No other issues, correct, before us?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that.
Yeah, good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of the night.
Bye-bye.
You too.
Thank you.
Enjoy
Bye.
your evening.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Take care.